The wedding bells began before dawn, and Helena Penrose knew at once that something was wrong. St. Anne's Chapel had no marriage announced for that morning. She would have known. For 6 weeks, she had organized every rehearsal, every subscription list, every delivery of candles and music, stands for the concert intended to save the chapel roof. Yet the bells rang above her now with bright, merciless joy, each peal falling through the cold stone nave like a celebration meant to wound someone. Helena's hands stopped over the keys of the small organ. The unfinished duet lay open beside her, its pages weighted by a silver pencil case that had belonged to her mother. She had arrived while the sky was still grey, hoping to complete the final passage before the musicians came. Her mother had written the first movement years ago. Helena had written nearly everything after it, though no printed program had ever carried her name. The bells rang again. Footsteps sounded below, not the measured tread of the rector or the soft shuffle of the sexton. These were hurried steps, followed by a woman's breathless laugh. Helena rose from the organ bench and looked down from the loft. Rupert Dunsford emerged from the vestry. He wore a dark blue coat, pale gloves, and the strained expression of a man who had rehearsed his innocence before committing the offense that required it. Beside him walked Millicent Penrose in a cream traveling dress. A small spray of orange blossom had been pinned beneath her bonnet. Helena did not understand what she was seeing until Millicent lifted her left hand. The ring caught the candlelight. For one suspended moment, the bells seemed very far away. Then every sound returned at once. The ropes striking in the tower, the rustle of Millicent's skirts, the rector murmuring to one of the witnesses, Rupert saying Helena's name as though he had found her where she had no right to be. You weren't meant to come this early. Helena descended the narrow stair from the loft. She kept one hand on the rail because her fingers had gone cold, but she did not hurry. Rupert had been expected at Rookhaven Hall that afternoon. Their families were to approve the wording of the engagement announcement over dinner. Lady Agatha had ordered fresh flowers for the drawing room. Helena's gown had been pressed. Nothing had been said of a wedding. Certainly nothing had been said of Millicent. Helena stopped 6 feet from them. How long? Millicent's smile disappeared. Rupert drew himself upright. Helena, don't make this more painful than it must be. How long have you been lying? He glanced toward the rector, whose embarrassment was visible even in the uncertain candlelight. 2 witnesses stood near the vestry door. One was Rupert's man of business. The other Helena recognized as a cousin from Wiltshire. Everything had been prepared. Nothing about this had happened in a single reckless night. Rupert lowered his voice. Millicent and I were married by special license. It was the only sensible course. Sensible for whom? For all of us. The answer came too quickly. He had practiced that as well. Millicent took a small step forward. Helena, I never meant for you to hear it from strangers. Helena looked at her cousin's cream dress, the orange blossom, and the new ring. You meant for me to hear it after it could no longer be stopped. Millicent's face tightened. Rupert moved between them as though Helena were the dangerous party. You understood that our attachment had changed. No, Helena's voice did not rise. You understood that you wished it to change. You simply neglected to tell me. A faint movement came from the gallery above the north aisle. Helena looked up. A man stood in the shadow between 2 stone pillars, one gloved hand resting on the carved rail. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and dressed with such severe precision that even the chapel's dimness could not soften him. Adrian Fenwick, Duke of Wycliffe, had the kind of face society described differently depending on whether it wanted his favor. Handsome when he approved a measure, ruthless when he opposed one, infamous when he refused to explain himself at all. Helena had seen him only twice before, once across a crowded room in Bath, once at a county dinner where 3 men had changed their opinions after he had merely looked at them. He had no reason to be in St. Anne's Chapel before sunrise, yet he had heard everything. Rupert followed Helena's gaze and went pale. "Your Grace." Adrian descended from the gallery without haste. "Dunsford." He acknowledged Millicent with a slight inclination of his head. Then he looked at Helena, not with pity, but with an attention so complete that she felt the effort it took to remain still. "Miss Penrose." Rupert forced a laugh, an unexpected family matter. A wedding is generally considered public enough to require fewer evasions. Adrian's tone was quiet. That made the words sharper. Rupert's mouth hardened. There is no scandal unless someone chooses to create one. Then you should have shown greater care in choosing your bells. The rector looked down. One of the witnesses coughed into his hand. Helena should have felt gratitude. Instead, anger pressed beneath her ribs. She did not want Rupert humiliated on her behalf. She wanted the truth, and the truth had already made itself plain. "Did Lady Agatha know?" she asked Millicent. Millicent's eyes flickered toward Rupert. That was answer enough. Before Helena could speak again, the chapel door opened with a forceful scrape. Lady Agatha Penrose entered, wrapped in a dark travelling cloak, her maid hurrying behind her. She took in the newly married couple, the witnesses, the Duke and Helena, standing in the centre aisle. Her expression settled not on Rupert, but on Helena. "You must leave at once." Helena stared at her mother. "I beg your pardon? The village will soon be awake. We cannot have you standing here as though you have been publicly abandoned." "I have been publicly abandoned." Lady Agatha's lips thinned. "Then, do not make a spectacle of it." Adrian shifted slightly, though he did not interrupt. Helena understood the restraint. He was waiting to see whether she would answer for herself. She turned toward the organ loft. Her music remained open beneath the small pool of candlelight. The concert would still take place. The roof would still leak if it failed. Her mother's final unfinished page would still wait for an ending, whether Rupert had kept faith or not. "I came to rehearse," Helena said. "I will finish what I came to do." Rupert stepped toward her. "Helena, don't be unreasonable." He reached for her arm. Adrian moved before Helena could withdraw. He did not seize Rupert or raise his voice. He simply placed himself between them. "She has not invited your assistance." Rupert stopped. A flush climbed his face. "This is a private matter." "You made it less private when you rang the bells." Helena looked past them toward the loft. Her knees felt unsteady, but the feeling no longer mattered. She had spent too much of her life being useful quietly, agreeable quietly, disappointed quietly. She would not now be hurried from a chapel because other people found the evidence of their cruelty inconvenient. "I will finish the rehearsal," she said again. This time, no one answered. She climbed the loft stairs. At the organ, she set her hands upon the keys. The first chord trembled, not from the instrument, but from her fingers. She began again. The melody her mother had written rose into the chapel, tender and unresolved. Below, no one moved. Helena played through the first movement, then the second, and reached the passage she had composed the night before. Its notes were stronger than she remembered. They did not plead. They gathered themselves and continued. When she finished, the final chord faded into the stone. Helena closed the folio. One page slipped free beneath her hand. She frowned and counted the sheets. The last page was missing. Not merely the unfinished ending, but the page bearing her mother's handwritten dedication. She searched beneath the bench, inside the folio pocket, and beside the pencil case. Nothing. Helena carried the music downstairs. Rupert and Millicent had gone. Lady Agatha waited near the door, rigid with impatience. Adrian stood beside the vestry passage, looking down at something on the flagstones. A small velvet jewelry case lay open near his boot. Helena recognized it before she reached him. It belonged inside the locked compartment of her music folio, the compartment where she had kept the forget-me. Not brooch Rupert had given her when their understanding first became known to the family. Adrian bent, but he did not touch the case. His gaze lifted to hers. "Miss Penrose," he said, "did you remove the brooch yourself?" Helena looked at the empty velvet hollow. No. The Duke's expression changed by almost nothing, yet the air around him seemed to sharpen. Then, your engagement was not the only thing stolen before dawn. By the time the carriage returned Helena to Rookhaven Hall, the sun had risen high enough to touch the upper windows. But the house felt colder than the chapel. News had travelled ahead of them. It always did when scandal had better horses than dignity. The footmen avoided Helena's eyes as she entered. A maid, carrying fresh linen, paused near the staircase, then moved aside too quickly. Somewhere beyond the morning room, a door closed, with the soft urgency of someone who had been listening. Helena gave her bonnet to the hall maid and walked toward the breakfast room without waiting to be summoned. Lady Agatha was already seated at the head of the table. Rupert stood near the window with one hand behind his back. Millicent sat beside the silver coffee service, still wearing her cream travelling dress, though the orange blossom had been removed from her bonnet. Adrian and the rector had arrived before Helena. The Duke stood near the fireplace, silent and composed, while the rector studied the carpet as if it contained a theological question of great importance. No one invited Helena to sit. She chose the chair opposite Millicent. The place had been set for her, though someone had removed the folded card bearing her name. "We must settle the matter before luncheon," Lady Agatha said. "The servants know. By noon, the village will know. By tomorrow, Bath may know." Helena placed her gloves on the table. "The marriage took place before dawn, Mamma. The matter was settled without me." Lady Agatha ignored the distinction. "You will write a note of congratulations, warm, gracious, and brief. It will establish that there was no rupture. There was a rupture. There was a change of understanding." Rupert spoke from the window, still refusing to meet Helena's gaze. "You knew our attachment had become one of duty." Helena looked at him. "No, I knew you had become less attentive. I did not know you had become a liar." Millicent flinched. Lady Agatha's hand tightened around her teacup. "That language helps no one. It identifies what happened." "What happened," Rupert said, "was that Millicent and I discovered an affection neither of us intended." Adrian's expression did not change, but the rector looked up. Helena heard the careful shape of Rupert's defense. An accident of feeling, a marriage of necessity, a betrayal too delicate to be called by its proper name. "And the special license?" Helena asked. "Did affection obtain that for you between midnight and dawn?" Rupert's jaw hardened. "There is no purpose in discussing private arrangements." "There is if you wish me to pretend the arrangements did not exist." Lady Agatha set down her cup. "You will not turn this breakfast into an interrogation." Then, perhaps Rupert should stop presenting answers to questions no one has asked. Adrian spoke at last. His tone remained mild, almost conversational. That made Lady Agatha look at him more sharply. "Your Grace, this is a family difficulty." It became a public difficulty when church bells announced it to half the parish. Rupert crossed the room. "I do not understand why you are here." "The rector asked me to accompany him." Adrian glanced toward the clergyman. He was troubled by a conversation you had with him 3 weeks ago. Silence settled over the table. Millicent's hand moved to the collar of her dress. Helena noticed the gesture because she had seen it in the chapel. Her fingers did not rest over the new wedding ring. They pressed against the hollow of her throat, as though covering something hidden beneath the fabric. Rupert's face lost color. A private inquiry concerning the license. "Not the license," the rector said quietly. "The possibility of one. You asked whether a special license could be arranged without public notice. I told you such matters required proper authority and sufficient reason. You said the families concerned were already agreed." Helena felt something inside her become still. 3 weeks. Rupert had sat beside her at dinner 12 days ago and discussed the wording of their engagement announcement. He had asked whether she preferred a spring wedding or an autumn one. The question had not been indecision. It had been camouflage. Lady Agatha looked toward Rupert. "You told me nothing of this." "There was nothing certain to tell." "You were certain enough to mislead the rector," Adrian said. "You cannot call the marriage impulsive now." Rupert turned on Helena as if the accusation belonged to her. "This need not destroy anyone if she behaves sensibly." "She?" Adrian asked. Rupert stopped. Helena looked at Millicent. "May I see what you are hiding?" Millicent's hand dropped from her collar. "I'm not hiding anything." "Then lower your hand." Millicent did not move. Lady Agatha's impatience sharpened. "Helena, you are overwrought." "No, I am observant." Helena reached for the small key she wore on a narrow chain beneath her sleeve. The key opened the compartment inside her music folio. She had checked it in the carriage. The lock bore no damage. Whoever had opened it had used the key or a duplicate. My forget-me-not brooch is missing. It was kept in the locked case with my manuscript. Lady Agatha frowned. "You have misplaced it." "I have not. You were distressed." "I was not distressed when I locked it away yesterday afternoon." Rupert gave a short laugh. "Must every missing trinket become an accusation?" Helena turned to him. "Only the trinkets connected to the man who married my cousin in secret." Millicent rose too quickly. Her chair scraped across the floor. "I didn't take it." No one had accused her directly. The words exposed more than silence would have. Helena watched Millicent realize it. Adrian did as well. He stepped away from the fireplace, not toward Millicent, but toward the table, placing himself where he could see every face. "Who knew where the brooch was kept?" he asked. Helena answered, without looking away from her cousin. "My mother, Millicent, and I." Lady Agatha stiffened. "You will not suggest that anyone in this family stole from you. Someone opened the case. Perhaps you opened it yourself and forgot. I remember locking it, then a servant moved it." Millicent spoke quickly. "One of the maids may have seen the key." "Which maid?" Helena asked. Millicent hesitated. "I don't know." "Then do not invent one." Lady Agatha stood. "Enough. You will write the note. You will apologize to Millicent for subjecting her to this ugliness on the morning of her marriage." Helena looked at her mother for several seconds. The demand was so complete in its injustice that anger nearly became laughter. She did not laugh. "No." Lady Agatha went still. "What did you say?" "I will not apologize. You are allowing humiliation to make you cruel." Rupert broke his word. Millicent entered my room and knew where I kept the symbol of that word. My property is missing. Yet you ask me to apologize because my questions inconvenience them. Helena rose. Her legs were steady now. A man's broken promise cannot become the moral failure of the woman he deceived. Rupert's expression hardened. You always did enjoy making yourself sound righteous, and you always mistook calmness for consent. The rector drew a quiet breath. Adrian did not smile, but something in his eyes changed. Approval would have embarrassed her. What she saw instead was recognition. He understood that she was not asking to be defended. She was refusing to be erased. Lady Agatha's voice lowered. You will do as I say. No. The word landed more softly than before, but no one mistook it. Adrian turned toward Lady Agatha. Miss Penrose has answered. This is not your decision. Precisely. His gaze moved to Helena. It is hers, Rupert scoffed. Your support will only confirm every suspicion. By tomorrow, they will say Helena encouraged your interest before our marriage. Then tomorrow's lies will have the same weakness as today's, Adrian said. They will still be lies. Rupert's face flushed. You have a reputation for destroying respectable arrangements. Only the arrangements that depend upon silence. Millicent sat again, her hands trembling near the coffee service. Helena noticed the edge of something beneath her collar. Not metal. Velvet. A narrow strip of dark blue velvet, like the ribbon lining of the missing brooch case. Millicent saw Helena looking and drew her shawl higher. The movement was small. It was enough. Helena did not expose her. Not yet. She needed certainty. Not another accusation the family could dismiss as jealousy. Adrian seemed to follow her gaze, though he gave no sign. Lady Agatha turned away as if the conversation had ended by her command. Helena will go upstairs until she has mastered herself. No, Helena said. I will go to my room because I choose privacy. That is not the same thing. She gathered her gloves. Adrian stepped aside to clear her path. He did not offer his arm. The restraint felt more protective than possession would have. As Helena reached the door, he spoke. Miss Penrose, may I request a private conversation later this morning? With your aunt present? Lady Agatha turned sharply. For what purpose? Adrian kept his eyes on Helena. To discuss a course of action that may prevent Mr. Dunsford from deciding the shape of her future twice in one day. Helena studied him. The infamous Duke had arrived with facts Rupert had tried to bury. He had defended her right to speak without pretending she needed permission. That did not make him safe. Power rarely was. My aunt will be present, she said, and I will decide whether the conversation continues. Adrian inclined his head. I would expect nothing less. Helena left the room with every gaze following her. Behind her, no one resumed breakfast. Helena had expected the Duke's proposal to be dangerous. She had not expected it to be reasonable. That unsettled her more. The conversation took place in the blue drawing room, less than an hour after breakfast, with Helena's widowed aunt, Lady Beatrice Penrose, seated near the window as chaperone. Lady Beatrice had arrived at Rookhaven the previous evening for the engagement dinner that would never happen. She now held her cane across her lap and watched Adrian Fenwick with the expression of a woman who had survived 2 decades of family politics and found most men insufficiently prepared for her questions. Helena sat opposite the Duke. Morning light fell across the carpet between them, pale and cold. The distance felt deliberate. Adrian had chosen a chair far enough away that no one could mistake the meeting for intimacy. Mr. Dunsford has already begun shaping the story, he said. A messenger left for Bath before breakfast. Helena kept her hands folded. You are certain? I stopped the messenger long enough to learn his destination. I did not open the letter. How restrained of you. One corner of his mouth moved. I have been accused of many things, Miss Penrose. Restraint is rarely among them. Lady Beatrice tapped one finger against her cane. Then let us hope today marks a new beginning. Adrian inclined his head. The letter was addressed to a gentleman who supplies items to several gossip columns. Rupert means to suggest that the marriage occurred because Miss Penrose had already formed an understanding elsewhere. Helena knew the destination of the accusation before he spoke it. With you? Yes, the word fell without apology. My presence at the chapel will support the lie. So will any public attempt I make to defend you. Helena looked toward the windows. Beyond them, the lawns descended toward a line of bare trees. A gardener crossed the distant path with a basket over one arm, unaware that her future had become a story men were sending to Bath. Then your support is a liability. It may become one. Adrian's honesty was almost severe. He did not soften facts to appear kinder. But Rupert will use my reputation whether I act or not. I would prefer that you know every danger before you choose a response. Lady Beatrice leaned forward. What response do you propose? 3. Adrian looked at Helena, not her aunt. First, Miss Penrose may leave Hampshire with Lady Beatrice today. I will arrange suitable lodgings in Bath or London and ensure that no one interferes with her concert work. My name need not be attached publicly. Patronage without explanation, Helena said. People would still ask why. They would. But questions are not proof. And the second choice. I issue a statement denying any prior understanding between us. I make no claim upon your time and no suggestion of courtship. I simply place my word against his. Lady Beatrice's brows rose. A duke's word carries weight, sometimes too much. Adrian's gaze did not leave Helena. That is why the choice must be hers. Helena felt the pressure beneath his calm. He was offering protection. But he understood that protection could become another form of possession if given without consent. And the third? She asked. Adrian paused, not from uncertainty, from respect for the weight of what he intended to say. You permit me to announce a formal courtship with the possibility of marriage. Lady Beatrice's cane struck the carpet once. Helena did not move. The room seemed to contract around the quiet ticking of the mantel clock. You are proposing marriage to a woman you scarcely know, she said. I am proposing that you consider it. That distinction will be lost on everyone outside this room. Then we must preserve it inside this room. Lady Beatrice studied him. Why my niece? Adrian sat back slightly. Because she is intelligent, composed, and less interested in my title than in whether I am telling the truth. Those are qualities one admires, Helena said. They are not reasons to marry. No, they are reasons to discover whether marriage would be wise. His answer came without romantic ornament. Strangely, that made it more intimate. There is also a practical consideration, he continued. I am supporting a measure concerning charitable subscriptions and local patronage. House Penrose has influence among several families whose support has been uncertain. A connection would strengthen my position. Lady Beatrice gave a dry laugh. At last, something honest enough to distrust. I thought you would prefer the truth. I prefer having it before the wedding. Helena glanced at her aunt, then back at Adrian. You would gain politically, yes. And I would gain protection from scandal. Yes, that sounds like a bargain. Many marriages are bargains. The question is whether both parties are allowed to read the terms. Helena thought of Rupert discussing wedding seasons while preparing another bride. And if I refuse, then I proceed with whichever of the other choices you permit, or none of them, if that is your decision. You would simply leave, if you required it. The answer came too quickly to be performance. Helena looked down at her hands. She had spent years being described as sensible. Sensible enough to accept a quiet engagement. Sensible enough not to demand affection. Sensible enough to organize concerts, while another person's name appeared above the work. Now, the most feared man in the county was offering her a duchess's title, and the only thing she wanted immediately was time. "I will not answer today," she said. "I did not expect you to. I will continue the concert, of course. My name remains on every composition I have written." Adrian's expression sharpened with interest. Was there any question of that? There is always a question when women's work becomes useful. Lady Beatrice gave Helena a small nod. Adrian did not offer reassurance. He asked, "What name should appear?" "Not an initial." "No." "Not anonymous." "No." "Then Helena Penrose." He said the name as though committing it to record. "I also remain free to refuse you after a public courtship." "Yes." "You will not use the courtship to secure the political support you mentioned before I have decided." He considered that. "I can promise not to represent you as committed. I cannot prevent others from drawing conclusions." "Then correct them when you can." "Agreed." Helena heard footsteps in the corridor. Lady Agatha's voice followed, low and irritated. The door opened without a knock. Her mother entered, Rupert behind her. Millicent remained absent. "This conversation has gone on long enough," Lady Agatha said. "Helena must withdraw from society until the matter settles." Adrian rose. Helena remained seated. "No," she said. Lady Agatha looked at her, as though the word had become a personal insult. "You cannot appear in Bath after this morning." "I can, and I will. The concert committee will not tolerate scandal. Then they may tell me so themselves." Rupert stepped into the room. "You are determined to embarrass everyone." Helena turned toward him. "You married my cousin before dawn. I do not think my presence at a concert will be the most memorable embarrassment of the week." Lady Beatrice concealed a cough that sounded suspiciously like laughter. Lady Agatha ignored her. "Your Grace, whatever misplaced concern brought you here, it must end now." Adrian stood beside the mantel, tall and controlled. "My concern is no longer misplaced." Rupert's face changed. "What does that mean?" Adrian looked at Helena before answering. The pause mattered. It gave her one final opportunity to stop him. She did not. "It means I have asked Miss Penrose to consider becoming Duchess of Wycliffe." No one spoke. Lady Agatha's hand rose to her throat. Rupert stared as if the floor had shifted beneath him. From the doorway came the faint sound of fabric. Millicent had appeared in the corridor. Her face was colorless. Helena stood then. She would not let the announcement become another decision made over her head. "His Grace has made an offer," she said. "I have not accepted it." Adrian's gaze met hers. Approval warmed nothing in his expression, yet she felt it. Rupert recovered first. "This proves everything you had him waiting?" "No," Helena said. "It proves that you cannot imagine a woman being offered a future without secretly arranging it herself. Bath will never believe this began today." Adrian's voice turned cold. "Bath may believe whatever it likes. Miss Penrose will still decide for herself." Rupert looked between them, anger replacing surprise. "You know nothing about her." "I know she finished a piece of music while you expected her to collapse." The answer struck the room into silence. Helena's breath caught, not because the words were romantic, but because they were exact. He had noticed the act itself, not her tears, which she had not shed, not her humiliation, which everyone else seemed eager to name. He had noticed what she chose to complete. Lady Agatha pressed her lips together. "This discussion is over." "No," Helena said. "It is merely finished for today." She moved toward the door. Millicent stepped aside without looking at her. Helena passed into the corridor and found a footman waiting with the Morning Post. He held out a large cream envelope addressed in a Bath stationer's hand. Helena broke the seal as she walked. Inside lay the printed program for the subscription concert. She found the duet halfway down the page. The title remained. Her name did not. Beneath it, in neat black type, were 2 words, arranged anonymously. Helena stopped. Behind her, Adrian emerged from the drawing room. He saw the page in her hand and the stillness in her face. "What have they done?" he asked. Helena turned the program toward him. "They have begun by removing my name." Helena read the 2 words again, though they did not change, arranged anonymously. The phrase was neat, polite, and more insulting than an open accusation. It erased her without admitting that anyone had done so. Adrian took the program from her only after she released it. His eyes moved down the page, then back to the place where her name should have been. "Who approved this?" "The concert committee," Helena said, "or my mother, through them." Lady Beatrice joined them in the corridor, her canes striking the floor with controlled irritation. Agatha has always believed a woman's usefulness increases when her name disappears. Helena folded the program once. "Then I will ask the committee to restore it." Adrian looked at her. "I can send a letter before the hour is out." "No." His expression sharpened, but he did not interrupt. "If they restore my name because the Duke of Wycliffe commands it, then it still does not belong to me. It belongs to your influence. And if they refuse you, then I will know exactly what they value." Lady Beatrice gave a small nod. "We leave for Bath after luncheon." Lady Agatha appeared at the far end of the corridor. "Helena is not going anywhere." Helena turned. Her mother stood with one hand on the banister, rigid with the certainty that authority remained hers because it always had. "The concert is in 9 days, Helena said. "I am the rehearsal director. You were. The committee has made a prudent adjustment. They have removed my name, not my work. Your work is for the chapel. My work is mine before it is anyone else's gift." The words came more firmly than Helena expected. Lady Agatha's face tightened. "You will not drag this family through another public scene. I did not create the first one. That distinction will not matter in Bath. Then Bath may learn it." Adrian remained beside Helena, but he said nothing. She felt the strength of that silence. He was allowing her to stand in it. Lady Agatha looked to him for support and found none. "Your Grace, surely you understand that society must be managed. I understand it is often managed by sacrificing the person least willing to complain. You know nothing of this family. I know Miss Penrose's name was removed from work she created." Lady Agatha's gaze shifted back to Helena. "If you go, you will go without my approval. I am 28 years old. You live under my roof. Not after today." The decision entered the corridor before Helena had fully examined it, but once spoken, it felt inevitable. Lady Beatrice straightened in satisfaction. "She will stay with me in Bath." Lady Agatha stared at her sister-in-law. "You encourage defiance." "I encourage adulthood." Helena expected fear to follow. Instead, she felt a thin, clean line of relief. By mid-afternoon, her trunks were packed. She took only what she needed for the concert, her correspondence, and the unfinished duet. The empty jewelry case remained wrapped inside the folio. She did not tell anyone that the missing final page had also contained her mother's dedication. That loss felt too private to place in Lady Agatha's hands. The journey to Bath took most of the day and part of the next morning. Lady Beatrice's carriage was well sprung but old, and the October roads had been softened by rain. Adrian travelled separately with his own servants, keeping enough distance to prevent gossip while remaining near enough to intervene if needed. Helena noticed the arrangement without asking whether he had planned it for her comfort or her reputation. By the time the pale stone terraces of Bath came into view, rumour had arrived before them. At Lady Beatrice's house on Milsom Street, 2 calling cards already waited. One came from a woman Helena barely knew. The second bore no message at all, only a name associated with one of the concert patronesses. It was not an invitation. It was an inquiry disguised as courtesy. Helena changed her dress, rested for less than an hour, then prepared to visit the committee. Lady Beatrice insisted on accompanying her. "I may be old enough to be ignored," she said, which is often the most useful age in a room full of ambitious people. Adrian arrived for a morning call just as Helena tied the ribbons of her bonnet. He carried no flowers and offered no easy consolation. "I have spoken to no one," he said, "as requested. Thank you. That does not mean I approve of your entering a hostile committee meeting without support. My aunt is coming." Lady Beatrice lifted her cane, "and I am devastating before tea." Adrian's mouth almost curved. "So I have been warned." He looked at Helena. "May I accompany you?" "Yes, but you will not speak unless they address you. You ask a great deal of a man with a reputation for interruption. Then consider it a test of character. I begin to suspect courtship with you may require improvement. There is no courtship yet. Quite right." The committee met in a drawing room overlooking Queen Square. 6 women sat around a long table covered with subscription lists, rehearsal schedules, and correspondence. At the head sat Lady Mercer, a composed widow in grey silk, whose name carried enough weight to silence lesser hostesses. Helena had always respected her because she rarely spoke before she had understood the room. Lady Mercer glanced at Adrian when he entered, then at Helena. "This is unexpected." "So was the removal of my name," Helena replied. No one offered an apology. A thin woman near the window adjusted her papers. The change was made to protect the concert from private controversy. The composition remains on the program because the music is excellent. Then the controversy does not concern the work. Lady Mercer's gaze sharpened. "It concerns whether your public association with the event will distract from its charitable purpose." Helena set the folded program on the table. "You are willing to use my labor, my arrangements, and my musicians. You are only unwilling to acknowledge who provided them." The thin woman looked offended. Anonymous contribution is often considered graceful in a lady, only when the lady chooses anonymity. Adrian remained near the door, silent. Helena felt his attention, but did not turn toward him. Lady Mercer tapped one finger on the program. "Lady Agatha informed us that you wished to avoid notice." "Lady Agatha did not ask me. She said the family was united. It is not." A small silence followed. The truth was indecorous. That did not make it less useful. Helena opened her folio and placed the manuscript on the table. "This composition began with my mother. I completed most of the second movement and all but the final passage of the third. I arranged the parts for the musicians. I organized the rehearsals. If the committee wants the piece, my name will appear." One woman murmured that such insistence sounded vain. Lady Beatrice's cane clicked once against the floor. Helena did not look at her. Credit is not vanity when it is accurate. Lady Mercer studied the manuscript. Can you prove which portions are yours? Helena pointed to the changes in ink, the marginal corrections, and the notation marks she always used when arranging strings. My mother wrote in brown ink. I write in black. The transition here is mine. So is the variation in the lower register. The final page is missing, but the preceding measures show where my composition begins. Missing? Lady Mercer asked. Taken from my folio yesterday morning. Interest moved around the table, not sympathy. Curiosity. Helena disliked it, but curiosity could open a door prejudice kept closed. There was also a brooch taken from the same locked compartment, she said. I do not know whether the thefts are connected. Before anyone could respond, a servant entered carrying a small parcel wrapped in paper. For Miss Penrose, he said. From Mr. Vale's jewelry shop. Helena frowned. She knew the shop by reputation, but had not ordered anything. The servant placed the parcel before her. Inside lay a note from the proprietor's apprentice. Miss Penrose, the note began. I hope the duplicate forget-me-not brooch met with your approval. The final payment remains outstanding. Helena read the sentence twice. Adrian moved a step closer, then stopped himself. Lady Mercer watched her carefully. What is it? Helena handed her the note. A question I did not know existed. The room shifted from judgment to attention. Lady Mercer read aloud the relevant line, then looked at Helena. You ordered a duplicate? No. Someone used your name? Or expected the jeweler to believe they had? Adrian spoke for the first time. Was the order collected? Helena turned to him. The question did not seize control. It clarified the next step. We should ask. Lady Mercer rang for the servant. Within half an hour, the apprentice arrived, breathless and apologetic. He was a narrow-faced young man with ink on one cuff and fear in his eyes at finding a duke in the room. The lady wore a veil, he said. She gave Miss Penrose's name and paid in cash. She was near Miss Penrose's height. Slighter, perhaps. Did you see her face? Helena asked. Not clearly, ma'am. Her voice, young, refined. She seemed nervous. Did she collect the copy? Yes, ma'am, 3 days ago. Millicent had arrived at Rookhaven 4 days ago. Helena felt the pieces move, not yet fitting, but no longer random. Lady Mercer folded the note. Miss Penrose will remain rehearsal director until this is understood. The thin woman objected. Lady Mercer silenced her with a look. Her name will be restored, provisionally. Helena lifted her chin, not provisionally. Lady Mercer held her gaze for several seconds. Then she nodded. Restored. Adrian said nothing. That restraint pleased Helena more than triumph would have. As they left the house, he offered her the pen she had dropped beside the committee table. You did not need me, he said. Helena took it from his hand. I needed you not to interfere. I am discovering that may be the more difficult service. She almost smiled. Behind them, the jeweler's apprentice called after Helena. There was one other thing, ma'am. She turned. The lady who collected the brooch wore a cream veil. It matched her traveling dress. Helena's fingers closed around the pen. Millicent had worn cream at the chapel. The first morning of Helena's restored appointment as rehearsal director began with 3 altered invitations, 2 anonymous notes, and a rumor that she had deliberately arranged the scandal to secure a duke. Bath had not yet finished breakfast, and already it had improved the story for its own amusement. Lady Beatrice burned the anonymous notes without comment. Helena corrected the invitations by hand. Adrian arrived at 11, with no bouquet, no jewel case, and no expression of triumph over the committee's decision. He brought only a folded list of the engagements at which they would be seen during the next week. "You said you would consider a public courtship," he said. "I thought it prudent to let you cross out every occasion you dislike." Helena accepted the list. The pump room appeared first, followed by a walk through Sydney Gardens, a rehearsal salon, and a small dinner at Lady Mercer's house. "You have omitted the theatre. I was advised that half the audience would watch you instead of the stage, and the other half would watch me watching you." Lady Beatrice, seated beside the fire with her embroidery, gave a dry hum. "At least His Grace understands Bath." Helena crossed out the dinner, but left the pump room, the gardens, and the rehearsal salon. 3 appearances are sufficient. Adrian glanced at the page. "You do not fear that caution will look like guilt?" "No, I fear allowing other people's curiosity to arrange my days." A useful distinction. He did not ask her to add anything back. That afternoon, Helena entered the pump room on Adrian's arm, with Lady Beatrice walking half a step behind. The room gleamed with polished columns, pale gowns, dark coats, and the restless social movement of people pretending not to stare. Every conversation seemed to soften as Helena passed. She heard fragments. Abandoned, Wycliffe, before the wedding, perhaps longer. Adrian's hand remained steady beneath hers. He neither tightened his arm nor guided her away. He allowed her to set the pace. A woman Helena knew only slightly approached, with a smile too bright to be kind. "Miss Penrose, what courage you have, appearing so soon." "The mineral water is less alarming than rumor suggests," Helena replied. The woman blinked. Adrian's mouth almost curved. "And your Grace," the woman continued, "how unexpectedly devoted." "Unexpectedness is usually the only interesting part of devotion," he said. The woman withdrew without obtaining a confession. Helena waited until they had moved beyond hearing. "You enjoy making people uncomfortable, only when they arrive comfortable with cruelty." "That sounds very noble." "It is not. I simply prefer shorter conversations." She looked at him then. "Do you enjoy being feared?" His expression changed by a fraction. The wit did not disappear, but something more guarded settled beneath it. "Fear clears a room. It does not build loyalty. Yet you use it when necessary." "And who decides when it is necessary?" Adrian met her gaze. "That is usually the danger." The answer stayed with Helena long after they left the pump room. It was the first time he had acknowledged his own power as a risk rather than a virtue. 2 days later, they walked through Sydney Gardens beneath thinning autumn leaves. Lady Beatrice followed with her companion at a proper distance, close enough to satisfy propriety and far enough to permit conversation. Bath society observed them from paths, benches, and passing carriages. Helena felt the weight of every glance. Adrian appeared not to notice, which meant he noticed all of them. "You have not asked whether I intend to accept you," she said. "You told me you required time. Most men hear that as an invitation to persuade. Most men consider persistence romantic when it is merely repetition." Helena looked ahead to hide the small smile that threatened. "You are very certain of other men's faults. I have spent years negotiating with them, and winning, often enough to become unpopular. Is that how you became infamous?" "Partly." He paused near a stone urn while Lady Beatrice stopped to examine a late rose. "I once ended a diplomatic marriage arrangement that would have benefited several important men. I discovered the foreign envoy involved had been purchasing votes through charitable subscriptions." Helena turned toward him. "You exposed him?" "Publicly." "And the woman intended for him?" "She was spared the marriage and blamed me for the loss of her title. Did you ask what she wanted before you acted? Adrian's silence answered. Helena held his gaze. Then perhaps she blamed you for the method, not the result. You have an inconvenient talent for finding the part of a story I would prefer to omit. You asked me to consider marriage. Omissions seem relevant. They are. He did not defend himself. That restraint disturbed her more pleasantly than flattery would have. At the rehearsal salon the following evening, Helena discovered that public curiosity could be useful. Patrons who had ignored her work now attended merely to observe the abandoned Miss Penrose direct musicians under the eye of the Duke of Wycliffe. Helena used their presence to demand punctuality. She arranged the violinists, corrected a hesitant entrance, and stopped the ensemble when a cellist rushed the lower passage. Adrian sat near the back, beside Lady Beatrice, exactly where Helena had placed him. He did not interrupt. He did not offer opinions he did not possess. When the other musicians departed, Lady Beatrice remained near the open door while Helena sat at the pianoforte with the unfinished duet before her. Adrian came forward only when she nodded. You said you do not read music, she reminded him. I said I do not read it well. That is a political answer. It is an honest evasion. Helena played the opening her mother had written, a gentle line that moved with the calm assurance of someone who believed an answer would come. Then she entered the transition she had composed years later. The melody darkened, resisted resolution, and returned changed. When she finished, Adrian remained silent. Helena lifted her hands from the keys. You may say you did not understand it. I understood where the first voice ended. She looked at him. He pointed to the page without touching it. The earlier passages ask permission before they change direction. Yours do not, Helena, felt a quiet shock of recognition. No one in her family had ever heard the difference. They called the entire duet her mother's work because that explanation required less adjustment. My mother wrote the first movement, she said. I wrote most of the second and nearly all of the third. Then, why has no one printed your name? Because she began it. Because I was younger. Because my family considered composition an accomplishment, not work. Choose whichever reason sounds least insulting. They are equally insulting. Helena lowered her gaze to the manuscript. My mother intended to publish it under both our names. She died before we completed the final passage. And now the last page is missing. But the music is not. His voice softened. You still know what belongs there. Not yet. You will. The certainty in his tone did not feel like pressure. It felt like attention. Adrian looked toward the top of the score. When it is finished, I know a publisher who handles private compositions. Helena closed the folio. No. He drew back slightly. No to the publisher. No to your arranging it before I decide what the work is meant to become. Fair. You accept refusal very easily for a powerful man, only when it is spoken clearly. He took the seat beside the pianoforte after she indicated it, leaving enough distance between them to preserve ease. May I ask one question? You may ask. Why did you hide that passage from the musicians earlier? Helena looked at him, surprised. You noticed. You changed the page before they reached it. It is the section I love most. That does not answer the question. It does. I did not want them playing it carelessly. Adrian nodded as if she had confirmed something important. I cannot read the notes well enough to follow them, but I know when you protect what matters. Helena laughed before she could stop herself. The sound startled them both. It was not loud. It was real. Adrian did not smile broadly or claim the moment. He only turned the next page when she lifted her hand toward it, and he did so at exactly the right time. A servant entered, carrying a note on a silver tray. Helena recognized Millicent's handwriting before she broke the seal. The message contained one sentence: "I can return what you gave up, but you must meet me before Rupert learns I have written." Helena read it twice. Adrian watched her face. Bad news, uncertain news. She handed the note to Lady Beatrice first, then to him. He read it and looked toward the empty velvet case resting inside Helena's folio. "Do you think she has the real brooch? I think she wants me to believe she does. Will you meet her?" Helena folded the note with care. "Yes." "Alone?" "No." Adrian inclined his head. "Good. That was not permission." "I know." His answer came quietly. It was relief. Helena looked back at the unfinished duet. For the first time since the chapel, she felt that more than one truth was moving toward her. One belonged to the stolen brooch. The other sat beside the piano, waiting for her to turn the page. Millicent chose Lady Beatrice's drawing room for the meeting, because it was neutral ground. Though nothing about her arrival suggested courage. She came wrapped in a dark cloak, despite the mild afternoon. Her bonnet tied too tightly beneath her chin, and one gloved hand closed around an empty velvet box. Helena noticed the box before Millicent sat down. It was the same deep blue as the lining of her missing brooch case. Lady Beatrice remained near the window, with her embroidery untouched in her lap. Adrian stood beside the mantel, present, because Millicent had agreed to speak only if the Duke promised. Rupert would not be told until she had finished. Helena had made no such promise. She sat opposite her cousin and waited. Millicent looked from Helena to Adrian, then back again. "I took the key." The confession came so quietly that Lady Beatrice stopped breathing for a moment. Helena did not move. "Which key?" "The one to your music case." "When?" "The night before the wedding." Millicent lowered her eyes. "You left it on the ribbon inside your reticule while you were speaking with the rector about the concert. I pressed it into wax and had a copy made." Helena had expected anger. What came instead was a cold clarity. Millicent had not acted in panic at dawn. She had prepared. Why? Millicent's fingers tightened around the empty box. "Rupert said he needed proof that you had released him from the understanding. And you believed a stolen brooch would prove that. He said, if you gave me the forget-me-not, people would understand you had accepted our marriage." Helena heard the evasion. "But I did not give it, no, so you took it." "Yes." Millicent's voice trembled, but she did not deny it again. Adrian remained silent. Helena was grateful for that. Millicent had spent years learning to look fragile whenever consequences approached. A man's interruption, even a protective one, would have given her somewhere to hide. Helena asked, "What did you do after you opened the case?" "I brought the brooch to Mr. Vale's shop in Bath, under my name. Rupert told me to." "Did he also tell you to order a duplicate?" Millicent nodded. "He said the real one might be recognized if it was damaged or inspected. He wanted a copy that looked convincing from several feet away." Lady Beatrice set down her embroidery. "That is not the explanation of a man seeking peace. That is preparation for deceit." Millicent flinched. "I know that now." Helena looked at the empty velvet box. "You knew enough, then, to hide your face beneath a veil." Millicent's mouth parted, but no answer came. Helena felt the first sharp edge of anger then. Not because Millicent had been frightened. Fear could explain much. It could not make innocence where calculation had already stood. "Did you know Rupert intended to marry you before you took the brooch?" Helena asked. I hoped he would. That is not an answer. Yes, Millicent looked up at last. He had promised. The room became still. Helena could hear a carriage passing in the street below, the wheels striking the uneven stones. Then you were not helping him escape an unwanted arrangement, Helena said. You were helping him replace me without admitting he had planned it. Tears gathered in Millicent's eyes. She blinked them back. Perhaps because Adrian was present. Perhaps because she understood Helena would not be moved by performance. You do not know what it was like, she said, to live at Rookhaven on your mother's charity. To know every dress was one you had finished with. Every invitations depended on whether Lady Agatha believed I would reflect well on the family. You had a home, a name, a place. I had nothing that could not be withdrawn. So you took mine. You would still have been safe. The words escaped Millicent before she could soften them. You would still have had your aunt, your music, your family. Rupert said you did not love him. He said you would be wounded in pride, but not ruined. Helena stared at her. There it was, the arithmetic by which one woman's pain became acceptable, because another woman's fear seemed greater. You decided I could afford the injury. Millicent looked away. I decided I could not afford to lose him. Adrian spoke then, but only to ask, does he provide you with money of your own? Millicent turned toward him, startled. That is not relevant. It is entirely relevant. His voice remained controlled. Does he? Millicent's silence answered. Helena watched Adrian's expression harden, not with contempt for Millicent, with recognition of Rupert's method. He keeps the household purse, Millicent said at last. He says accounts are too complicated. Lady Beatrice gave a quiet, bitter laugh. How convenient. Helena leaned forward. Where are the brooches now? Rupert has both. The real one and the copy, yes. Why? He said he would decide which one to use. The words settled heavily. Adrian moved away from the mantel. Use for what? Millicent shook her head too quickly. He did not tell me. He did, Helena said. You simply do not want to say it. Millicent pressed the velvet box to her lap. There is to be a rehearsal for principal patrons in 2 days. Rupert has promised the committee a large subscription. He said, once everyone saw the proper evidence, the talk would end. Evidence that I released him? Yes. Or evidence that I had already chosen someone else? Millicent glanced toward Adrian. That was enough. Helena felt Adrian's attention shift to her, but he did not reach for the conversation. She continued. Rupert intends to show the brooch and claim I gave it to you as proof that I accepted the marriage. He said no one would believe you were abandoned if they saw you had surrendered the symbol willingly. And the copy? He did not explain. He intends to control which version is inspected, Adrian said. One to display, one to produce if challenged. Millicent began to cry then, silently, the tears slipping past her careful restraint. Helena did not look away. Will you testify to what you have told us? Millicent's face changed. Fear replaced shame at once. No, why not? Because is my husband. That did not prevent him from using you. You do not understand. I understand more than you think. Helena's voice remained even, but understanding is not the same as agreeing to be sacrificed again. Millicent stood. If I speak, I will have nowhere to go. Adrian said, you may have protection at Wycliffe House or with a respectable widow of my family's acquaintance. No one will compel you to return to Dunsford. Millicent looked at him as though he had offered exile. And live on charity again. Better charity than coercion, Lady Beatrice said. Millicent shook her head. You can say that because none of you have ever had to wonder whether a hostess might decide you had stayed too long. Helena rose as well. Then choose with your eyes open. Stay if you must. But do not call the choice innocence. Millicent's mouth trembled. I came to warn you, and I am grateful for the warning. Helena paused. I am not grateful for the theft. The distinction struck Millicent harder than anger might have done. She looked toward Adrian. Do not tell Rupert I came. Adrian answered, I will not promise secrecy that helps him harm Miss Penrose. Then I have made everything worse. No, Helena said. Rupert did that. You helped him. Those are not the same thing, but neither are they nothing. Millicent left with the empty velvet box still in her hands. Lady Beatrice waited until the front door closed below. She may yet speak. Helena looked at the place where her cousin had stood. Only when silence becomes more frightening. Adrian came nearer, stopping at a respectful distance. You were kinder than I would have been. No, I was precise. That may be the rarer mercy. Helena met his gaze. You wanted to move her somewhere safe. Yes. You cannot rescue her by choosing for her. I know. His answer came after the briefest hesitation. Or I am learning. Helena looked down at the table where Millicent had rested the velvet box. Fear does not excuse what she did. No, but it explains why Rupert chose her. Adrian's expression tightened. Because she could be frightened into obedience. Because he thought so. A servant entered carrying a fresh packet from the concert committee. Helena broke the seal while Adrian and Lady Beatrice watched. The revised program listed the principal selections. Halfway down the page appeared a new solo titled Lady Millicent's Heir. Helena read the opening bars printed beneath it. Her breath stopped. The melody was not Millicent's. It was the missing final page from the duet she had written with her mother. Someone had altered the title and removed the dedication, but the phrasing was unmistakable. Adrian saw the recognition in her face. What is it? Helena turned the page toward him. They have not only taken the brooch. Her voice was quiet now. They have taken the music. By the afternoon of the patrons' rehearsal, Helena understood that theft could become respectable if enough important people benefited from it. The octagon room had not yet filled, but already the principal subscribers occupied the best chairs, speaking in lowered voices beneath the chandeliers while musicians tuned near the raised platform. The revised program lay on every seat. Helena's name appeared beside the duet, restored after the committee meeting. Yet farther down the page, the stolen final passage had been printed beneath a different title. Lady Millicent's Heir. The insult was arranged in elegant type. Helena stood at the conductor's table, with the manuscript open before her, and forced herself to breathe evenly. Lady Mercer approached first. Miss Penrose, I received your note. Then you understand the problem. Lady Mercer looked at the disputed page. I understand that you claim the solo is taken from your composition. It is not a claim. The transition begins in my handwriting 3 pages earlier. The phrase resolves the theme my mother introduced in the first movement. It belongs to the duet. A committee member in lavender silk leaned over the table. The printed solo was supplied by Mr. Dunsford with Lady Millicent's name attached. Mr. Dunsford did not compose it, nor, one assumes, did Lady Millicent. The woman's smile suggested that such details were beneath practical concern. Still, Mr. Dunsford has guaranteed the final subscription needed for the chapel roof. We cannot offend a principal donor over a private family disagreement. Helena looked at her. You are willing to call theft a family disagreement because the thief paid for the printing. The woman stiffened. Lady Mercer intervened before she could answer. What do you want done? Remove the false title. Restore the passage to the duet. Print a correction before the public concert. The programs are already distributed. Then announce the correction aloud. Murmurs moved among the nearby patrons. Several had drawn close enough to hear while pretending to study the flower arrangements. Adrian stood near the rear of the room, beside Lady Beatrice. He had arrived 10 minutes earlier and had not approached Helena. That restraint was deliberate. She had told him the dispute must remain hers until someone attempted to deny her the right to answer. This rehearsal is not the place for accusation, Lady Mercer said. Then it should not be the place for stolen work. Helena kept her voice low. She would not give the room the spectacle it expected. I am asking for accuracy, and I am asking for calm, the committee member replied. The concert cannot survive another scandal. It is already surviving on my music. Before Lady Mercer could answer, the doors opened. Rupert entered with Millicent on his arm. He had chosen the moment with care. Nearly every principal patron had arrived, and enough musicians stood nearby to carry the account through Bath before supper. Millicent wore pale blue. At her throat, fixed to a narrow velvet ribbon, rested a cluster of enamel forget-me-nots. Helena recognized the shape instantly. From several yards away, the brooch looked convincing. The blue petals, the small pearl centers, the curved silver stem. Only one petal tilted too far to the left. The counterfeit. Millicent met Helena's eyes and looked away. Rupert smiled as if entering a room where the outcome had already been purchased. I hope we have not delayed anything. Lady Mercer's expression cooled. We are discussing the authorship of the new solo. There can be no difficulty, Rupert said. My wife supplied it. Helena turned fully toward him. Your wife supplied a page taken from my folio. A serious accusation, a precise one. He glanced toward the patrons now openly listening. Helena has been distressed. I had hoped we might avoid bringing private disappointments into a charitable event. There it was again. Her certainty translated into distress, his deception dressed as concern. Helena pointed to the brooch at Millicent's throat. May I see the back? Millicent's hand rose instinctively to cover it. Rupert answered for her. No, then you concede it is not the original. A ripple passed through the room. Rupert gave a quiet laugh. On the contrary, it is the very brooch you gave Millicent before our marriage. Helena heard Lady Beatrice's cane strike the floor once behind her. Adrian did not move. Rupert continued, his voice pitched perfectly for the room. Helena wished to avoid a painful explanation. She placed the brooch in Millicent's hands as a sign that our understanding had ended. She knew where my affections lay. I did no such thing. You did. Millicent's face had gone pale, but she remained silent. Rupert looked toward Adrian. It is hardly surprising she wished to release me. She had already attracted more ambitious attention. Several heads turned toward the Duke. The accusation was elegant in its cruelty. If Helena denied giving up Rupert, she looked abandoned. If she admitted it, she appeared to have pursued Adrian before the secret wedding. Lady Mercer spoke sharply. Mr. Dunsford, this rehearsal is not an arena for insinuation. I am merely preventing Miss Penrose from rewriting events. Helena looked at Millicent. Did I give you that brooch? Millicent's lips parted. Rupert's fingers tightened over the hand resting on his sleeve. The gesture was small enough to escape most eyes. Helena saw it. So did Adrian. She did, Millicent whispered. The lie hurt less than Helena expected. Perhaps because she had already understood its shape. Then let me examine the inscription, Helena said. The original bears my mother's initials beneath the clasp. Rupert's smile thinned. You would make a scene over a family keepsake. You introduced it as evidence. Evidence must bear examination. A few patrons murmured agreement. Rupert shifted his ground. Your insistence only proves how closely you have studied the copy. So now you admit it is a copy. The question landed cleanly. Rupert's eyes flashed. I said no such thing. Helena stepped closer, stopping several feet from Millicent. The lower petal leans left. The original is straight. The clasp on mine was repaired years ago and closes from the opposite side. That brooch was made recently. Rupert turned toward the room. Remarkable. She identifies every flaw at a glance, yet claims no knowledge of the order. Perhaps Miss Penrose commissioned the duplicate herself. The cruelty of the tactic drew a faint breath from Lady Mercer. Any fact Helena supplied became another accusation against her. Adrian moved forward then, not toward Rupert, toward Helena. She saw the intention in his face before he spoke and raised one hand. He stopped. The room noticed. Do not take it from her, Helena said quietly. Not by title, not by force. Adrian held her gaze. Then he inclined his head and remained where he was. It cost him something. That mattered. Rupert seized the pause. There, even His Grace understands restraint. You mistake obedience to Miss Penrose for agreement with you, Adrian said. His tone was colder than the stone beneath them. Lady Mercer lifted the program. Until the question of the brooch and the manuscript is resolved, the committee must prevent further disruption. Helena knew what would follow before the words came. Miss Penrose, you will be suspended from rehearsal duties. The musicians went still. The duet, Helena asked, will remain in the program. Under whose direction? Another conductor can be found. And the false solo? Lady Mercer hesitated. The committee member answered. It will remain provisionally. Helena looked from the printed page to the people, prepared to use her work while excluding her presence. Rage rose, bright and clean. She did not let it shape her voice. Then you have chosen the donor over the truth. No one contradicted her. Adrian reached her side and offered his hand, not his arm, his hand, a choice rather than a command. Helena looked at it, then placed her gloved fingers in his. She stepped down from the platform on her own. He walked beside her through the listening room. Rupert called after them. Running away will not prove innocence. Helena stopped at the doors and turned. No, but remaining where dishonesty is rewarded would prove I had learned nothing. Outside, the corridor was empty and cool. Adrian faced her, anger tightly contained. Marry me now. Helena stared at him. No. A public engagement would make them hesitate. It would make Rupert's lie appear true. I can protect you from this, not by replacing evidence with your name. His jaw tightened. Then tell me what to do. Believe that I would rather endure the truth than be rescued by a convenient falsehood. He looked back toward the closed doors. I can have this concert cancelled before nightfall. Helena heard the danger beneath the promise. Do not. Adrian's eyes returned to hers. For the first time since the chapel, he did not answer immediately. Then he said, I will not allow them to humiliate you again. Helena released his hand. That is not the same as allowing me to decide how I answer. Behind the doors, the musicians began tuning once more. Her music continued without her. Adrian looked at the room as though calculating every lever of influence within reach. Helena saw the decision forming in his silence, and fear touched her for the first time that day. Not fear of Rupert. Fear that Adrian would protect her in the one way she had asked him not to. By sunset, Helena's name had vanished from the concert completely. She learned it not from Adrian, but from a folded note delivered by one of Lady Mercer's servants. The committee had appointed another ensemble, reassigned the rehearsal schedule, and removed the duet from the principal program until the present controversy could be resolved. The phrase was almost courteous. That made it worse. Helena stood in Lady Beatrice's drawing room, with the note open in one hand, while the fire settled behind her. On the table lay the corrected program she had fought to restore only 2 days earlier. Her name remained there in ink, crossed out now by someone else's decision. Lady Beatrice read the committee's message, then reached for her cane. Wycliffe. Helena looked toward the window. Adrian's carriage had arrived 10 minutes before the note. He had sent word that he wished to speak with her. "Do not summon him angrily," Helena said. "I would rather hear whether he lies." Lady Beatrice's expression hardened. "If he does, I shall summon him angrily afterward." Adrian entered moments later. He wore evening clothes, though his cravat had been tied with less care than usual. That small disorder told Helena more than any apology might have. His gaze went first to the note in her hand, then to the crossed-out program. "They informed you. They informed me after they obeyed you." He closed the door only after Lady Beatrice nodded permission. "I did not instruct them to erase your name. No, you merely made continuation impossible." Adrian remained standing. "I persuaded the principal patrons that the present ensemble should withdraw, which left the committee no concert they could, present with me attached. It left them no occasion to expose you again." Helena folded the note once, carefully, because otherwise she might tear it. "You cancelled the room around me. I prevented Rupert from using it. You prevented me from using it too." Lady Beatrice sat near the fire, silent but watchful. Adrian looked from Helena to the crossed-out program. The gossip columns were prepared to print the accusation by morning. I stopped them. How? I reminded 2 editors who controls a large portion of their political subscriptions. So they are silent because you frightened them. They are silent because the story is false. That is not the same thing. His jaw tightened. Would you prefer the lie published? I would prefer not to be managed as though truth were another inconvenience you could remove from the schedule. Adrian took a breath, then spoke more slowly. You were suspended. The committee had chosen Rupert's money over your testimony. Every additional rehearsal gave him another audience. Then, I should have been allowed to decide whether the audience was worth facing. You had already been humiliated once, and you decided once was my limit. The words landed harder than she intended. Adrian did not answer immediately. Helena saw the part of him that had negotiated with ministers, patrons, and men accustomed to being obeyed. He had calculated risk, influence, and outcome. Somewhere in that calculation, she had become the danger to be removed from her own life. I was trying to protect you, he said. Everyone keeps saying that when they mean they have chosen for me. His expression changed. The anger remained, but something beneath it had begun to understand. Helena placed the program on the table between them. My mother removed my name from private performances because she feared society would call me immodest. My family called my work an accomplishment, so no one would accuse me of ambition. Lady Agatha asked the committee to erase me because recognition might attract scandal. Rupert took my music because he believed no one would defend my authorship. Now you have done the same thing with kinder motives. Adrian looked down at the program. That is not what I intended. Intent does not restore the name. I can restore it by ordering them, if necessary. then it will still belong to your authority. Helena's voice lowered. Do you not see? You have made my work possible only when you approve the conditions under which I may stand beside it. Adrian stepped closer, then stopped well beyond arm's reach. Tell me what I should have done, asked. And if you had refused to withdraw, then you should have trusted me to bear the consequence of my choice. Rupert would have destroyed your reputation. He is trying, too. That does not give you the right to erase me first. Silence filled the room. Lady Beatrice's fire cracked softly behind them. Adrian looked toward the windows, where the last light had faded from the glass. I have spent most of my life preventing disasters before other people understood they were in danger. That may be useful in politics. It is. It is not courtship. The word struck them both. Helena had not meant to speak it so plainly, but she would not retreat from it. Adrian's face became still. No, he said, it is not. Helena took the original courtship list from the writing desk. She had kept it folded beneath her correspondence. The pump room, Sydney Gardens, the rehearsal salon. 3 public appearances chosen by her own hand. She placed the list beside the program. This arrangement ends tonight. Adrian did not move. Because I failed once. Because the failure reveals what you do when fear becomes stronger than trust. I can correct it. Not while I am still standing inside your solution. Lady Beatrice rose and crossed the room with deliberate care. Helena will remain with me. Her callers will be received at my discretion. Adrian looked at Helena. Are you asking me not to call? For now. His face gave nothing away, but his hand closed once at his side. And the concert? I will decide what happens to it. The committee has replaced the ensemble. Then I will find another. They may refuse you the room. Then I will find another room. Rupert has already secured the patrons. Then I will find people who value music more than his subscription. Adrian's gaze held hers. You have no guarantee any of that will succeed. Neither did he. For the first time, something like pain moved across Adrian's expression. Not the dramatic pain of a rejected lover, something quieter. The recognition that his power could not buy back the moment before he used it against her wishes. I do not withdraw the offer I made, he said. You should. I do not wish to. Then I will refuse it. His breath changed. Helena forced herself to continue. Not forever, perhaps, but the offer as it exists now, the offer made to protect me from scandal. The offer tied to strategy, political advantage, and your belief that you know how much danger I may bear. I refuse that offer. Adrian looked at the crossed-out program again. I understand. Do you? Not entirely. His honesty hurt more than a polished apology would have, but I understand enough not to argue. Helena picked up the program and held it out. You corrected this line by hand when they first removed my name. Adrian took the page. His fingers closed over the edge where her name had been written. I remember. Then, remember what it meant before you crossed it out for them. He looked up sharply. I did not cross it out. No, you only gave them the reason. The words left no space for defense. Adrian inclined his head. You are right. Lady Beatrice looked almost disappointed that he had not resisted long enough to justify using the cane. Adrian folded the program and slipped it inside his coat. May I ask one thing before I leave? Helena waited. If you choose to rebuild the concert, will you permit me to know whether you are safe? You may ask my aunt, and if she tells me nothing, then you will endure uncertainty. A faint, bitter acknowledgement touched his face. A difficult lesson. Necessary ones often are. Adrian moved toward the door. He stopped beside Lady Beatrice. I regret placing your niece in greater danger while believing I had removed it. Regret is useful only if it alters habit, she said. I am beginning to see that. He left without asking Helena to reconsider. The silence after the door closed felt larger than his presence had. Helena stood very still. She had wanted him to understand. She had not expected understanding to hurt. Lady Beatrice came beside her. You did not send him away because you do not care. No, that is why it mattered. Helena looked toward the pianoforte. The unfinished duet lay inside its folio, missing its final page and now its place in the concert. She crossed the room and opened it. In the margin of the third movement, beneath a faded correction in her mother's hand, she noticed a line she had never seen before. The ink was pale, almost absorbed by the paper. The final passage must belong entirely to you. Helena read it once, then again. Outside, Adrian's carriage rolled away into the dark. Helena sat at the pianoforte, drew a fresh sheet of paper toward her, and placed her hands above the keys. She had lost the committee, the ensemble, the Duke's protection, and every public certainty she had possessed that morning. For the first time, the ending was hers to write. Helena worked until the candles guttered low, but the final passage did not come through force. It came when she stopped trying to imitate her mother. For hours, she had moved between the old phrases and the empty measures, searching for a resolution that would honor the opening without remaining trapped inside it. Near midnight, she played the first movement once more. Her mother's melody entered gently, full of patience and certainty. Helena answered it with a line of her own, not softer, not dutiful, clear. The notes rose, resisted, and then joined the older theme without surrendering their shape. Helena stopped with both hands above the keys. Lady Beatrice, who had fallen asleep near the fire, opened one eye. Is that it? I think so. Then write it before grief teaches you to doubt yourself. Helena smiled faintly and bent over the manuscript. She wrote until the ink dried dark beneath her hand. At the top of the fresh page, she placed the title of the duet. Beneath it, she wrote her mother's name, then her own. The decision looked almost ordinary in black ink. It felt like a door opening. By morning, Helena had a plan. Lady Beatrice listened without interruption, though her brows rose when Helena explained that she intended to approach Lady Mercer again. The committee removed you, her aunt said. Lady Mercer did not. She permitted it, yes, which means she has something to repair. Helena, dressed in a dark green walking gown, gathered the manuscript and sent a note requesting a private call. Lady Mercer received them before noon in a smaller drawing room than the one used for committee meetings. No other patronesses were present. The widow stood beside a table covered with correspondence, her expression guarded. I had not expected you to call. I had not expected to be erased from my own concert twice. Lady Mercer's gaze moved to the manuscript beneath Helena's arm. The committee believed withdrawal would reduce the scandal. The Duke believed the same. Both decisions were made without me. His Grace acted to protect you. That does not make the result less damaging. Lady Mercer studied her for several seconds. What do you want? Helena placed the completed duet on the table. I want the concert restored. The original ensemble has accepted another engagement. I will find musicians. The principal patrons may withdraw. Then I will secure smaller subscriptions. The room may no longer be available. Then I will perform elsewhere. Lady Mercer's mouth tightened, though not with displeasure. You have answers prepared. I have had practice being told no. Helena opened the manuscript to the final passage. This piece was begun by my mother and completed by me last night. I will perform it under both our names. I will also answer the accusations concerning the brooch after the music is finished, not before. You intend to turn the concert into a hearing? No, I intend to prevent Rupert from turning it into one without opposition. Lady Mercer looked down at the page. And what proof do you possess? Not enough yet, but I know where to seek it. That is not reassuring. It is honest. The older woman walked to the window. Carriages moved through Queen Square below, their wheels shining against the damp road. If I allow this, she said, I risk every subscription attached to my name. If you do not, you lend your name to theft. The words hung between them. Lady Beatrice made no attempt to soften them. Lady Mercer turned. You will need witnesses who cannot be dismissed as family partisans. Agreed. The jeweler must speak. I will ask him. Not the apprentice alone, the proprietor. If he refuses, then the apprentice, provided someone respectable, is present to confirm his account. Lady Mercer returned to the table. You must also guarantee there will be no shouting, no seizure of property, and no theatrical declaration from the Duke. I can guarantee my own conduct. Can you guarantee his? Helena thought of Adrian standing in the corridor, already, calculating how to dismantle the room around her. No, but I can require it. Lady Mercer looked at the new final passage. You truly wrote this last night? Yes, then play it for me. Helena moved to the pianoforte. The instrument was slightly sharp in the upper register, but the music survived it. She played the opening, the altered middle, and the new conclusion. When the last note faded, Lady Mercer remained still. Your mother would recognize the beginning, she said. Would she recognize the end? Helena closed the score. She would recognize me. Something in Lady Mercer's face softened. Very well, I will hold the octagon room for 3 days. Find your musicians, find your proof. If either fails, I withdraw. That is fair. No, Miss Penrose, it is dangerous. Those are not always different. From Lady Mercer's house, Helena went directly to Mr. Vale's jewellery shop, with Lady Beatrice beside her. The proprietor received them in a narrow back room that smelled of metal polish and velvet. His apprentice stood near the workbench, pale with anxiety. Mr. Vale folded his hands over his waistcoat. I regret the confusion, Miss Penrose, but I cannot involve my establishment in a dispute among noble families. Helena placed the duplicate order note on the table. Your establishment is already involved. A lady gave your name, a veiled lady who paid in cash and ordered a copy of my brooch. We had no reason to suspect fraud. Then say precisely that. He glanced toward Lady Beatrice. My customers value discretion. So do thieves, Lady Beatrice said. The apprentice looked down to hide a reaction. Helena kept her voice calm. I do not ask you to accuse Millicent or Rupert. I ask you to identify the work your shop performed. Mr. Vale hesitated. The duplicate was made from the original, which means the original was in your possession. Briefly. When? The apprentice moved before his employer could silence him. He opened a drawer and withdrew a repair ticket. The clasp on the original was unsafe, ma'am. We retained it for 2 days. Mr. Vale's face tightened. Thomas. The record exists, sir. Helena took the ticket. The date was unmistakable. Rupert had claimed she gave the brooch to Millicent before the wedding. Yet on that day, the original had been in Mr. Vale's shop, awaiting repair.
Who collected it?
Helena asked. The apprentice swallowed. The same veiled lady. She took the original and the copy together. Did she sign? No, ma'am. But Mr. Dunsford sent a note authorizing the final payment. Mr. Vale closed his eyes briefly. the apprentice found a second paper in the drawer. Rupert's name did not appear in full, but the instruction bore his initials and direction. Helena felt the first true shift in the balance, not victory, structure. A fact that could not be changed by tone or title. "Will you attend the concert?" she asked Mr. Vale. "I cannot." "Will you allow Thomas to attend?" "Absolutely not." Thomas looked up. "Sir, I made the copy." "And you will keep your position by remembering that." Helena saw the fear in the young man's face. He needed the employment. She would not ask him to sacrifice it casually, then provide a signed statement and the repair ticket. Mr. Vale shook his head. "I must consider the consequences." Lady Beatrice leaned forward on her cane. "Consider also the consequence of being known as the jeweler who helps gentlemen fabricate evidence against women." That decided him more quickly than morality had. He agreed to prepare the statement by the following afternoon. Outside the shop, Helena unfolded the ticket once more. Lady Beatrice looked over her shoulder. One witness, one piece. Enough? Not yet. When they returned to Milsom Street, a letter waited on the hall table. Helena recognized Adrian's hand. She carried it unopened to the drawing room and stood for a moment before breaking the seal. The letter contained no defense. Adrian wrote that he had restored the musicians to her disposal if she wished to employ them. But they would attend under their own names and accept direction only from her. He would not contact the committee, the newspapers, or the patrons again without permission. He asked for no reply. Helena read the letter twice. Then she crossed to the writing desk. "You are answering him?" Lady Beatrice asked. "Only with terms." Helena wrote that she would accept the musicians if they understood they served the concert, not the Duke. She required no public announcement of his support. She required no carriage, no escort, and no correction issued in her name. She sealed the note before doubt could turn clarity into cruelty. The next 2 days moved quickly. Helena secured a violinist from Bristol, 2 local players, and 3 members of Adrian's household orchestra who arrived without livery. Lady Mercer reinstated the room. Smaller subscribers returned when they heard Helena would perform the disputed works herself. Curiosity had wounded her. Now it filled seats. On the second evening, Helena rehearsed the final passage with the new ensemble. The first attempt faltered. The second found its balance. By the third, the music sounded as though it had always known where it was going. When the musicians departed, Helena remained alone at the pianoforte with Lady Beatrice nearby. She wrote the final inscription on the clean presentation copy. Composed by Helena Penrose from a theme by Anne Penrose. Her hand did not shake. A servant entered with a note from Millicent. "Rupert has hidden the real brooch inside the presentation case to be given to Lady Mercer after the concert. He believes no one will ask to open it." Helena folded the message and placed it beside the completed score. The music was ready. The proof was beginning to gather. What remained was whether she could stand before the room that had removed her and make it hear her name. Adrian came to Lady Mercer's drawing room at 4 the next afternoon and discovered that Helena had arranged the chairs before he arrived. Lady Beatrice sat near the window with her cane across her knees. Lady Mercer occupied the place nearest the fire. Helena stood beside the pianoforte with the completed score closed beneath one hand. A single chair waited for Adrian opposite her, far enough away to make the purpose of the meeting unmistakable. He took it without comment. "You asked to speak," Helena said. "I asked to apologize." His voice was quieter than she expected. "Those are not always the same thing." "No." He looked toward the manuscript, then back at her. I have spent years treating uncertainty as an enemy. In politics, that habit is rewarded. One removes the dangerous variable before it alters the outcome. Helena held his gaze. I was the variable. Adrian did not soften the answer. Yes, Lady Mercer's expression tightened. Lady Beatrice remained still. Helena had expected him to explain why his fear had been reasonable. Instead, he reached inside his coat and placed a packet of papers on the table between them. These are the letters I sent to the patrons, the notes I sent to the editors, and the pledges I used to persuade the committee. I have withdrawn every instruction. The committee has full control again. And the newspapers, they may print what they choose. Helena felt a small shift in the room. He had not merely promised restraint. He had surrendered the machinery he had already set in motion. You understand that may harm you, she said. Yes, your political measure depends upon several of those subscribers. It does. And Rupert may connect your name to mine more aggressively. He almost certainly will. You accept that? Adrian's expression did not change. I accept that I do not have the right to prevent you from acting because the consequences frighten me. The words landed with greater force than a declaration would have. Helena turned slightly toward Lady Mercer. The octagon room is confirmed for the evening after tomorrow, Lady Mercer said. The musicians have accepted. The principal subscribers are returning, though some admit they are more interested in the dispute than the charity. They will still pay for the roof. Lady Mercer's mouth almost curved. Practicality suits you. It has had to. Helena opened the score. I will conduct from the dais. The disputed duet will be performed in full. After the music, I will answer any question Lady Mercer permits. Adrian leaned forward. Rupert will provoke you before the performance if he can. Then I will not answer before the performance. He may attempt to approach the musicians. They have been instructed to speak only to me or Lady Mercer. He may send the brooch elsewhere. That risk exists whether I stand on the dais or hide, at home. Adrian's jaw tightened. He was still calculating. Helena watched him recognize the instinct and stop. Where do you want me? He asked. The question mattered because it placed the choice with her. In the audience, a faint line appeared between his brows. Near the front? No. Near the aisle? No. Where then? 6 rows back, beside Lady Beatrice if she will permit it. Not beside the committee. Not at the entrance. Not close enough to suggest that the room belongs to you. Lady Beatrice lifted her chin. I permit it, provided he does not whisper through the music. Adrian inclined his head. I shall strive for discipline. Helena continued. You will not stand unless Lady Mercer requests it, unless Rupert threatens someone, or unless I ask you a direct question. And if he insults you, he will. If he questions your character, he already has. If the room turns against you, Helena's fingers rested on the edge of the score, then you will remain seated. The silence after those words was different from the silences that had followed their earlier arguments. This one carried risk freely accepted. Adrian looked at her for several seconds. Very well. Lady Mercer exhaled softly, though she had not appeared to hold her breath. Helena closed the manuscript. There is one more condition. Name it. You will not use our courtship, your offer, or your regard for me as evidence that I am telling the truth. Adrian's face became still. You believe I would. I believe you might be tempted to say your intention to marry me proves my worth. It does not prove the facts. No. And I do not need to become desirable to a duke in order to become credible. He absorbed the rebuke without resistance. Agreed. Helena had prepared herself for argument. His agreement left her with nowhere to direct the anger that remained. It settled into something more difficult, grief for what might have been easier if he had understood sooner. Adrian looked toward the pianoforte. "May I ask why you still allowed my musicians to come?" "Because they agreed to play under their own names and follow my direction. Not because they are mine. They are not yours." A flicker of rueful humor crossed his face. "You are correct. They would be delighted to hear it." Lady Mercer rose. "I should review the patron list before supper. Lady Beatrice, will you help me decide which names are likely to faint and which are merely hoping someone else does?" Lady Beatrice stood with effort, gladly. The two older women moved into the adjoining room, leaving the door wide open. Helena understood the courtesy. They had granted privacy without abandoning propriety. Adrian remained seated until Helena went to the pianoforte. "You asked in your letter whether I would permit you to know if I was safe," she said. "I remember. I am safe. I am relieved. That does not mean the concert will be comfortable. I have never confused comfort with safety." Helena opened the duet to the final passage. "You also offered to help without deciding how." "Yes. Turn the pages." Adrian rose. He approached slowly and took the chair beside the pianoforte, leaving the proper distance between them. Helena placed the score where he could see the marked corners. "You said you cannot read music well. I can recognize a repeated symbol and a raised hand. Then wait for the raised hand. A demanding system. You may withdraw. I have withdrawn from enough." Helena looked at him. The sentence held no demand for forgiveness, only acknowledgement. She began to play. The first movement entered softly, her mother's melody moving with the patience of remembered love. Adrian followed the pages with intense concentration. At the first turn, he moved too early. Helena stopped. "You anticipated. I thought the phrase was ending. It was breathing. There is a difference, a considerable one. Then begin again." The second time, he waited. Helena lifted 2 fingers, and only then did he turn the page. The paper whispered beneath his hand. They continued into the darker middle movement, where her own music resisted the older theme before finding a way to answer it. Adrian watched the score, but she sensed his attention moving between the notes and her face. At the beginning of the final passage, her hands hesitated. Not because she had forgotten the music, because this was the first time she would play the completed ending for him. "It belongs to you," he said quietly. Helena looked at him. "Do not tell me what it means." "I was reminding myself." She returned to the keys. The final passage rose cleanly. It did not surrender to the earlier melody. It joined it. For several measures, the 2 themes moved side by side, separate and harmonious. When Helena reached the last page, Adrian waited. Her hand remained above the keys. He did not turn it. She gave the smallest nod. Only then did he move. The restraint was almost invisible. It touched her more deeply than any public defense he had offered. Helena played the final chord and let it fade. Neither of them spoke at once. "That was the part you protected from careless playing," Adrian said. "A version of it. And now it is finished." "No," his voice was gentle. "Now it is yours." Helena closed the score. "Do not become eloquent merely because you have behaved well for half an hour. I would not dare." She almost smiled, then remembered what waited beyond the room. "Tomorrow, Rupert may say things designed to make you act. He will. You must not, I know. Knowing is not the same as doing." "Then judge me by what I do." Helena studied him. "Why do you still want to be there?" Adrian looked toward the open doorway, where Lady Beatrice's voice drifted faintly from the next room. Then he answered without wit, because for the first time in my life, I want to witness someone reclaim a room without taking it for them. The honesty unsettled her, and if I fail, then I will remain. Not intervene, not unless you ask. Helena looked down at the score. Tomorrow you do not need to save me. I understand. She lifted her eyes to his. You only need not leave. Adrian's expression changed with a quietness more intimate than touch. I will be there. That evening, after Adrian had gone, a sealed note arrived at Lady Mercer's house. It was addressed to the Duke, but delivered through Helena, because the messenger had been instructed to place it in her hands if Adrian was absent. Helena broke the seal only after sending a servant to ask whether Adrian permitted it. His reply returned within the hour. Open it. Inside, Rupert had written a single threat: withdraw Helena from the program, or Bath will learn that the Duke of Wycliffe once considered marrying Millicent Penrose. Helena read the line twice. The old wound opened in a new place. Adrian had promised disclosure. Yet somewhere behind his silence stood another arrangement, another woman, and another truth he had not trusted her to bear. Helena sent for Adrian before dawn, not because she wished to confront him in anger, but because anger had already proved how quickly silence could harden into another form of distance. He arrived at Lady Beatrice's house while the lamps still burned in the hall, wearing a dark coat over evening clothes, and carrying the exhaustion of a man who had not expected rest. Lady Beatrice received him in the small morning room, then seated herself near the door with her cane across her knees. Helena stood beside the window with Rupert's note open in her hand. Adrian saw the paper and stopped. You read it? With your permission? Yes. His gaze moved over her face. Then ask. Helena held out the note. Did you consider marrying Millicent? The question entered the room without ornament. Adrian did not look away. Her name was proposed to me. By whom? Lady Agatha. Helena's fingers tightened around the paper. When? 5 months ago. Lady Beatrice's expression sharpened. Before Rupert's courtship with Helena was formally discussed. Yes. Helena felt the old pattern gather around her. Conversations held elsewhere. Futures considered without the woman most affected. And what did you say? I agreed to one meeting. Why? Adrian stepped farther into the room, but did not approach her, because Lady Agatha suggested a connection between House Fenwick and House Penrose might help secure support for the charitable measure I mentioned. She described Millicent as young, agreeable, and without conflicting obligations. Agreeable. Helena heard the bitterness in her own voice. That word has purchased many women's silence. I know. Did you intend to propose? No. Did you consider it? He paused. The pause hurt more than the answer. Briefly, Helena turned toward the window. The glass reflected the room behind her. Adrian standing still, Lady Beatrice watching him with cold attention. Outside, Bath remained dark and quiet, innocent of the scandal, waiting for evening. Why did you not tell me? She asked. Because the meeting meant nothing. It means something now. Yes, and because you thought I would believe I had replaced her. Adrian's silence confirmed it. Helena faced him again. You decided what truth I could bear. I did. After promising not to, yes. He did not defend himself. That made the wound cleaner, not smaller. There was no courtship, he continued. No understanding. I spoke with Millicent once in Lady Agatha's drawing room. She said little. I found the arrangement unsuitable and declined it the next morning. Because of her, because the entire conversation treated marriage as a political transaction, in which neither proposed party had been asked what they wanted. Helena almost laughed at the irony. And yet you kept the transaction secret from me for my own good. Adrian lowered his eyes for the first time. Yes, Lady Beatrice spoke from near the door. You learn slowly, Your Grace. More slowly than the cost permits. Adrian reached inside his coat and withdrew a slim packet tied with black ribbon. He placed it on the table. The memorandum of the meeting. Lady Agatha's original proposal. My written refusal. There was no engagement, no promise, and no second meeting. Helena did not touch the papers. Why bring them? Because Rupert will use the omission. You should have every fact before he does. Now. Too late, but now. His honesty pressed against the hurt without asking it to disappear. Helena crossed to the table and untied the ribbon. Lady Agatha's hand was unmistakable. The proposal described Millicent's pliability, her lack of fortune, and the advantage of placing a dependent girl in a powerful house. Helena read Adrian's refusal next. It was concise. The proposed alliance would not proceed. No personal insult. No invitation to reconsider. Does Millicent know you declined because of the arrangement itself? Helena asked. I do not know what Lady Agatha told her. Rupert may have told her you rejected her for me. He may have, and used that humiliation to bind her more closely. Adrian's face hardened. Yes, Helena retied the packet. I will not use this unless Rupert raises the accusation publicly. That is your decision. You will not answer for me. No, you will answer only for yourself. Yes, he accepted each boundary without flinching. Helena looked at him across the table. Do you still intend to sit in the 6th row? If you permit it. I do. Relief moved through him so quietly that another person might have missed it. Helena did not. This does not restore the courtship, she said. I understand. It does not mean I forgive the omission. I understand that as well. Then why do you look relieved? Adrian's expression shifted. Because you have not asked me to stay away. The answer touched something she had been trying to protect. Before she could respond, the front bell rang. Lady Beatrice rose. At this hour, it is either disaster or family. A servant entered moments later and announced Millicent. She came into the room without Rupert, her face pale beneath a hastily tied bonnet. She had no maid with her. The breach of propriety alone revealed the depth of her fear. He means to leave England, she said before the door fully closed. Helena stared at her. When? After the concert. He says there will be too much unpleasantness once the subscriptions are settled. And you? Millicent looked down. He says I may remain with Lady Agatha until he sends for me. Lady Beatrice gave a sound of disgust, which he will not. Tears filled Millicent's eyes, but she did not allow them to fall. I know. Adrian remained near the table, giving Helena the place of authority. She asked, What is inside the presentation case? Millicent's gaze flew to hers. You know about it. You told me enough. Millicent twisted her gloves. The real brooch, the missing music page, the order receipt from Mr. Vale's shop. Helena felt the room narrow around the words. Why does Rupert have the receipt? He kept it in case the jeweler became troublesome. He said proof of the order would ruin Mr. Vale if it appeared. The shop had helped copy a family jewel without permission. Blackmail, Lady Beatrice said. He called it leverage. Men often rename their ugliness, Helena replied. Where is the case now? Rupert has it. He intends to present it to Lady Mercer after the concert as part of the donation records. Why include the original brooch? Because he believes no one will ask to open the case. If challenged, he can produce whichever brooch suits the story. Adrian's gaze hardened. And if the case disappears? Millicent shook her head. He will blame Helena. Then it must not disappear, Helena said. Millicent looked at her, frightened. What do you want me to do? Ask him for it in front of witnesses. Millicent recoiled. I can't. You can. He will know I warned you. He already intends to abandon you. That does not make him harmless. Helena softened her voice without weakening it. No, but it means silence will not purchase your safety. Millicent turned toward Adrian. Can you take it from him? Adrian looked at Helena before answering. Not if Miss Penrose forbids it. Millicent stared between them. You would let him keep the evidence, Helena said, until he reveals it himself. And if he refuses, then you will ask why a gift, listed for public presentation, cannot be opened before the patroness receiving it. Millicent pressed both hands together. Everyone will know what I did. Yes, the word was gentle and final. I will not promise to hide your part. Will you forgive me? Helena looked at the woman who had taken her key, her brooch, her engagement, and part of her mother's music. Not today. Millicent's face crumpled, but Helena continued. I can promise that Rupert will not be permitted to place all the blame upon you. I can promise that you will have somewhere safe to go if you speak. I cannot promise that truth will cost nothing. Millicent looked toward the floor. He said you would be too proud to help me. He misunderstands pride. Helena paused. So did I. Adrian's gaze lifted to hers. Millicent drew a shaking breath. I will ask for the case. Before Lady Mercer and the committee, Helena said. Not in a private corridor. Not alone. And if he refuses, then let him refuse publicly. Millicent nodded once. The motion looked small, but it carried more courage than all her earlier tears. Adrian said, You may remain under Lady Mercer's protection. After the concert, I will provide funds through her, not directly, and only if you choose it. Millicent glanced at Helena. Helena nodded. That is your choice. For the first time, Millicent seemed to understand the difference. She left as the sky began to pale. Adrian remained by the table. I could have Rupert removed from Bath before evening, he said. Do not, I know, and you will not use diplomatic contacts to make him vanish afterward. No, he must face the consequences. Here, he will. Helena picked up the concert program she had returned to him days earlier. He had kept it. Her name, written in his hand, remained beneath the printed erasure. She placed it between them on the table. Take this tonight. Adrian looked at the page, then at her. What does it mean? It means you may sit in the 6th row. A faint ache softened his face. Nothing more? Not yet. Then I will be grateful for what it is. That evening, the octagon room blazed with candlelight. Every chair appeared occupied. Helena stepped onto the dais with the completed score in her hands. Adrian sat 6 rows back beside Lady Beatrice, exactly where she had placed him. Rupert stood near the front with Millicent on his arm. Her face was pale, her hands empty. No presentation case rested beside her. Helena looked once toward Adrian. He did not rise. Then she turned to the musicians, lifted her hand, and began. The first notes carried farther than Helena expected. They rose into the octagon room and settled beneath the chandeliers, drawing every whisper into silence. For the length of the opening movement, no one moved except the musicians. Her mother's melody came first, graceful and familiar. Then Helena's own music entered, darker, firmer, refusing to disappear inside the older theme. She did not look toward Rupert. She did not look toward Adrian. She watched the ensemble, felt the pulse of the piece gather beneath her hand, and led them into the final passage she had written alone. When the last chord faded, the room held still for one suspended breath. Then the applause began. It was not wild, Bath society rarely surrendered dignity that easily, but it was sustained, and the name printed on every program had already done what Rupert had tried to prevent. Helena Penrose had been heard before anyone could accuse her of speaking. Lady Mercer rose from the front row. The composer will be acknowledged before the patron presentation. A murmur passed through the room. Helena remained on the dais. Rupert stepped into the aisle before Lady Mercer could continue. "A touching performance," he said, though sentiment should not be mistaken for truth. Millicent stood beside him, pale and rigid. Adrian remained seated, 6 rows back. Helena noticed that before she noticed anything else. He had kept his promise. Rupert turned toward the audience. "Miss Penrose has made herself the heroine of a story she carefully arranged. She would have you believe she was abandoned without warning. She neglects to mention that His Grace once considered marrying my wife." The room stirred at once. Heads turned toward Adrian. He did not rise. Helena looked at Rupert. "You have introduced that claim. You may explain what you believe it proves." Rupert smiled. "That you were not betrayed, that you were already maneuvering for a greater match while pretending devotion to me. I was not aware of the proposed connection." "Convenient." "True." Rupert looked toward Adrian. "Will your Grace deny that Lady Millicent Penrose was once discussed as a possible Duchess of Wycliffe?" Adrian stood then, but remained beside his chair. "I will not deny it." The room tightened. Helena felt the old wound open, but she did not turn away. Adrian continued. "Lady Agatha suggested the connection. I met Lady Millicent once. I declined the arrangement the following morning. There was no courtship, no promise, and no second meeting." Rupert lifted one shoulder. "Yet you concealed it from Miss Penrose." "Yes," Adrian's voice carried clearly. "That was my error. I believed withholding the fact would spare her unnecessary hurt. I was wrong." A different murmur moved through the audience. Not scandal this time. Recognition. A duke had admitted fault without dressing it as strategy. Helena met his gaze briefly. He did not ask forgiveness. He only told the truth. Rupert turned back to Helena. "How fortunate that His Grace now finds confession useful." "More useful than deception," Helena said. Lady Mercer stepped forward. "Mr. Dunsford, you have interrupted a charitable concert. If you possess evidence, present it. If not, sit down." Rupert's smile hardened. Gladly. He reached into his coat and produced the forget-me-not brooch. Under candlelight, the enamel petals gleamed. Several women leaned closer. "This was given to my wife by Miss Penrose before our marriage, a token that the prior understanding had ended." Helena looked at Millicent. "Did I give you that brooch?" Millicent's lips parted. "No sound came," Rupert answered for her. "She has already confirmed it." "Then the object may be examined." Rupert closed his fingers around the brooch. "There is no need." "You introduced it as proof," Lady Mercer said. "Proof may be inspected." Mr. Vale stood from a chair near the side wall, his apprentice Thomas beside him. Rupert's confidence shifted for the first time. Helena stepped down from the dais and placed the repair ticket in Lady Mercer's hands. The original brooch was in Mr. Vale's shop for clasp repair on the day I was supposed to have given it away. Lady Mercer read the date aloud. The room went quiet. Mr. Vale accepted the brooch from Rupert under the patroness's gaze and turned it over. "This is the duplicate," he said. "Paste stones, new clasp. The lower enamel petal carries the floor from our mold." Rupert laughed once. Then Miss Penrose ordered it herself. Thomas stepped forward before fear could stop him. "No, sir. You sent the payment instruction." He produced the note bearing Rupert's initials and direction. Rupert's face changed. You are a shop boy repeating what you were told. I made the copy, Thomas said. A veiled lady brought the original. Your note authorized payment and collection. Every eye moved to Millicent. Helena did not speak at once. She gave her cousin the space she had once begged Rupert to give her. Millicent stared at the floor. Rupert said softly, "Do not be foolish." Helena heard the threat beneath the gentleness. "Millicent," she said, "do you intend to let him write the rest of your life as well?" Millicent's head lifted. Fear remained in her face, but something inside it had altered. "Give Lady Mercer the presentation case," she said. Rupert's expression went blank. "There is no case." Lady Mercer turned toward the side table. "A presentation case from Mr. Dunsford is listed among the evening's formal gifts." A servant brought forward a polished mahogany box. Rupert moved as if to intercept it, but Adrian stepped into the aisle. He did not touch him. He merely stood there, and Rupert stopped. Lady Mercer placed the box on the table. "Open it." Rupert said nothing. "Open it," she repeated. When he still did not move, Millicent took the small key from the chain at her waist. Her hand shook so badly that Helena almost reached for it. She stopped herself. This choice had to remain Millicent's. The lock clicked. Inside lay the real brooch, the missing final page of the duet, and the jeweller's receipt for the counterfeit. A collective breath passed through the room. Helena picked up the original brooch and turned it over. Her mother's initials were engraved beneath the clasp. The missing page still bore the dedication in her mother's hand. "For Helena, who must one day finish what I began." She closed her fingers around the paper, not the jewel. Rupert's voice sharpened. "Millicent arranged this. She stole the key. She ordered the copy." "I did," Millicent said. The words barely carried, but the room heard them. "I took the key. I brought the brooch to the shop. I knew it was wrong." She looked at Helena. "Rupert planned how it would be used. He told me no one would believe her if the copy appeared first. He said her silence would make the lie easy." Lady Agatha, seated near the front, went white. Helena turned toward her. "And my name on the concert program?" Lady Agatha rose slowly. "I asked the committee to remove it." "Why?" "To protect the family." "From what?" Lady Agatha's composure broke by a fraction. "From being discussed." Helena looked around the crowded room, then let it be discussed accurately. No one laughed. No one whispered. Lady Mercer faced Rupert. "Your subscription will be refused. The committee will submit the false order and payment note to our solicitor. Mr. Vale may pursue his own complaint." Adrian spoke from the aisle. "House Fenwick withdraws every form of patronage from Mr. Dunsford." Rupert turned on him. "You think this makes you honorable?" "No," Adrian said. "It makes the consequence clear." His gaze moved to Helena. "I also acknowledge that I used influence to remove Miss Penrose from this concert because I believed I knew how to protect her. I was wrong. She restored the event without me. The public confession landed more deeply than any declaration could have." Helena did not thank him. She did not need to. Lady Mercer lifted the program. "The committee records Helena Penrose as composer and rehearsal director. The disputed subscription will be restored under her name." Applause began again, but Helena raised one hand. It stopped. "Millicent must answer for what she chose," she said. "Rupert must answer for what he planned. My mother's work must be returned to its proper place. That is enough." She looked down at the real brooch and did not fasten it to her dress. Instead, she placed it beside the recovered manuscript page. Then she returned to the dais. "The final passage will be performed once more," she said. Lady Mercer looked toward the printed program. Under whose name? Helena faced the room. Mine. The musicians lifted their instruments. Adrian resumed his seat. Millicent stood apart from Rupert for the first time since the chapel. Helena raised her hand, and the final passage began again. Stronger now, because no one else held its ending. The morning after the concert, Adrian came to Lady Beatrice's house, without flowers, a ring, or any document requiring Helena's signature. He carried only a bound copy of the duet. The cover was plain blue leather, and the title page bore two names in equal type. Anne Penrose, Helena Penrose. He placed it on the table between them and remained standing until Lady Beatrice indicated a chair. I had 3 copies made, he said. 1 for you, 1 for the chapel archive, 1 for any publisher you choose, if you choose one. Helena touched the edge of the binding, but did not open it yet. Permission before sending it to the binder? I asked Lady Beatrice whether binding constituted publication. She informed me that even a duke may be trained if corrected often enough. Lady Beatrice looked pleased. I said no such thing. I implied it. Adrian's gaze returned to Helena. I came to withdraw the proposal I made at Rookhaven. The words surprised her, though she had expected something like them. Entirely? As it was made, yes. He folded his hands loosely. It began in scandal. It included political advantage. It assumed that protection could become a foundation for marriage. That offer no longer deserves an answer. Helena studied him. He looked tired, but not defeated. Then why are you here? To ask whether, when enough time has passed, you might permit me to court you properly. Lady Beatrice's brows rose. Helena felt warmth move through her chest and resisted the urge to answer too quickly. What would properly mean to you? No decisions made in your name. No public statement before your consent. No use of rank as evidence that I am right. No interference with your work unless invited. No assumption that fear gives me authority. That is an impressive list of recent failures. I have had excellent instruction. And if I refuse, I will continue to support the chapel anonymously, remain grateful for the music, and leave you in peace. Would you truly? Adrian paused, not happily. The honesty made her smile despite herself. 3 months, she said. 3 months of courtship. No engagement announced. No political claims attached to my family. No publisher contacted without my approval. Agreed. And if you attempt to cancel anything for my own good, the courtship ends. That seems severe. It is meant to. Then agreed. Lady Beatrice lifted her cane slightly. I will witness the terms. May I ask one question? Yes. Do you want this courtship, or are you offering it because I behaved correctly last night? Helena thought of him, seated 6 rows back, remaining still, while every instinct in him must have demanded action. I want to know whether last night was a change or an exception. Fair. And I want to know who you are when you are not saving anyone. Adrian's expression softened. I have wondered the same. The 3 months that followed were not dramatic. That was their value. Adrian attended rehearsals and sat where Helena placed him. When patrons praised the duet, he introduced her as the composer before anyone could call her merely the future Duchess of Wycliffe. When a publisher expressed interest, Adrian sent the letter unopened to Helena. She read it, negotiated her own terms, and accepted. The agreement protected her name, her income from sales, and the right to approve future arrangements. Adrian offered advice only after asking whether she wanted it. Sometimes she did, sometimes she did not. He learned to survive both answers. Lady Agatha wrote twice. The first letter defended her choices through duty, reputation, and fear. Helena returned it unanswered. The second contained no defense. It admitted that she had mistaken silence for gratitude and usefulness for consent. Helena replied after a week. She agreed to correspondence, not reconciliation without conditions. She did not return to Rookhaven. Not yet. Millicent went to live with a widowed relative in Somerset under an arrangement managed through Lady Mercer. She lost invitations, comfort, and the illusion that consequences belonged only to other women. She also gained access to a small allowance Rupert could not control. Helena did not forgive her quickly. She did, however, answer one letter in which Millicent asked how to live after being known for the worst thing she had done. Helena wrote that a life could not be rewritten by denial, only continued by better choices. Rupert remained in England because leaving would have required funds and friends he no longer possessed. Creditors pursued him. Mr. Vale filed a complaint through a solicitor. The concert committee demanded repayment of the false subscription. House Fenwick withdrew every recommendation. Adrian did not intervene to soften any result. By the end of the third month, winter had settled over Bath. Snow traced the edges of the rooftops, but did not fall heavily enough to stop the evening rehearsal at Lady Mercer's salon. Helena played the duet before a small audience, then dismissed the musicians early. Lady Beatrice remained in the adjoining room with Lady Mercer, close enough for propriety and far enough for privacy. Adrian stood beside the piano, holding the final page. "You have turned it correctly 3 times this week," Helena said. "I am developing a reputation for patience. Do not let it become vanity. You are vigilant." She closed the score. "The 3 months are over. I know, and you have not asked. You said 3 months. I assumed that meant 3 complete months, not 3 months minus an impatient afternoon." Helena looked at him. "You have changed. Somewhat. Not entirely. No. Good." Adrian's eyes warmed. "Good? I did not wish to marry a man who had become agreeable through fear. That would be a grave disappointment to my enemies." She laughed softly. Then the humor passed, leaving the truth between them. Adrian moved 1 step closer. "May I ask now?" "Yes." He did not kneel. He did not produce a ring before hearing her answer. "Helena, will you build a life with me in which neither of us writes the other's part?" Her breath caught. The question was simple, but it contained every correction he had made. "Yes," she said. "Because you need protection?" "No." "Because my title improves the program?" "Certainly not." "Then why?" Helena held his gaze. "Because you learned to wait for my signal." Adrian's relief broke through his restraint. He took her hand only after she offered it. Their wedding took place 6 weeks later at St. Anne's Chapel. It was small. Lady Beatrice stood beside Helena. Lady Mercer attended. The rector, who had witnessed the first betrayal, now witnessed a promise made without secrecy. Lady Agatha came, but did not take the place of honor. Helena chose where everyone stood. No bells rang until after the vows. No one applauded. Adrian signed the register, then passed the pen to Helena without covering her hand. The settlement had already secured her separate income, her royalties, and her authority over her compositions. It was mentioned once, and then put away. Their marriage would not be measured by documents alone. The following winter, Helena performed the published duet at a private concert at Wycliffe House. The title page rested open on the piano. Anne Penrose and Helena Penrose appeared side by side, equal in size. Adrian sat beside her to turn the pages. He had become skilled, though not careless. When the final passage approached, his fingers moved to the edge of the paper and stopped. He waited. Helena played the line she had written in grief. then the answering phrase she had found in freedom. At the last measure, she gave the smallest nod. Only then did Adrian turn the page. The paper whispered beneath his hand. Helena played the final notes, and this time the ending belonged to no scandal, no bargain, and no stolen promise. It belonged to the woman who had written it, and to the man who had learned not to turn the page before she was ready.